all that, like a T20 match. So, message from Ganpati ji.
A
Okay.
very good evening to all of you from me, Charulata Bansal. Welcome to our webinar on sustainability and the next phase of business growth organized by Celerity Supply Chain Tribe. As geopolitical issues converge on the world stage, companies around the world will soon be required to report their climate impact with the same rigor as their financial performance. Late last year, SEBI India announced that Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report, which is a BRSR, will be mandatory for the country's top 1,000 listed companies beginning financial year 2022-23. At Celerity Supply Chain Tribe, we take the lead to share ESG best practices, analyze industry wise challenges for sustainability, specifically in the manufacturing, services, and logistics domains, via quarterly webinars and focused content in our monthly digital magazine. So, with great pleasure, I welcome our panelists of this very first webinar of the very first month of this year. With a huge round of applause, please welcome Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti, board chairman at some of the country's most preeminent organizations, ESG and IR Evangelist. Next, we have next we have Dr. Umesh Kulkarni, partner at 3PS Advisory in Sustainability Consulting. Then we have Mr. Prabodha Acharya, Chief Sustainability Officer at GSW. We are also expecting Padma Shri Professor Ganpati Yadav, National Science Chair, SERB, Government of India, Emeritus Professor of Eminence, ITC Mumbai, and consultant to join us for this webinar. To make these 90 minutes more interactive, I would I would ask the audience to keep writing in the comments section on LinkedIn or YouTube and keep asking questions in the comment section. Your questions will be taken up during the discussion. So without further ado, I now invite Sanjay ji to take forward the discussion. Over to you, Sanjay ji.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Charu. Thank you, Celerity. And most important, thank you all the delegates who have registered today and who have signed up to join. This is something very important to us. Your feedback was an amazing feedback in 2022. And with that, we started a huge series on ESG with a focus on ESG for 2023, whereby you will see at least 2 or 3 more webinars during the year and then some content every month by way of a write-up on ESG. So thank you very much for everybody for your feedback that we have taken up. Wonderful day today. We have some amazing line of speakers. My name is Sanjay Desai. I feel honored today to actually be a part of the moderator for such an amazing line of speakers. I'm based in Singapore. I'm a supply chain professional for last 35 to 36 years, running a couple of my own companies, including supply chain consultancy advisory, and as well as the senior executive headhunting. I would request each of my panel to self-introduce themselves quickly, starting with Shailesh ji. Shailesh ji, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. It's an absolute delight to be on the Celerity Supply Chain Tribe webinar. I am simply a student of ESG. I keep learning every day, and my approach to ESG is to motivate people to get it into their DNA so that we can all actually collaborate and take action. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Prabodha ji, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sanjay ji, and good evening from Mumbai to all the listeners, and good evening to my panelists. Such a humble introductions by Shailesh ji, but I would start telling that I'm a chief sustainability officer of JSW Group, and my job is to partner with the CEOs, the functional heads, the senior executives to develop a strategy. But in essence, in line with Shaileshji's introductions, I always tell that I'm in a mission, I'm a missionary, and my mission is to change the mindset of the people who can change the world to make it a better livable place. Thank you. I look forward to the introductions and discussions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabodha ji. Dr. Umesh ji, over to you.
Hello, good evening, everybody. As Prabhuda says, good evening from Mumbai. Thank you, Celerity, for giving this opportunity to be online with you all for this very important session on ESG, sustainability, and it's going to be the need of the hour. And I just don't follow the ESG in my profession, but personally also I try to be ESG oriented person. Did my doctorate in environmental science. Last 30 years I'm in this field, and I'm looking forward for a great interaction for the next 1.5 hours. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Uh, Dr. Ganapatiji, Professor Ganapatiji, you are there? We can see you, but are you able to speak? You're on unmute, sir.
Now can you hear me? But I was not able.
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay, we lost him. Some technical glitch. So I'm sure he will join again. And once he joins, we can start again with his introduction quickly. In the meantime, let's move on, right, with the clock that we have. So this ESG was something been discussed for the last 2 3 years, and especially after when COVID actually pushed the panic button, right? All the organizations have been looking a bit helter and skelter in terms of where are our assets, where are our people, your visibility, and eventually it leads to what is about climate. Very recently, I was reading a book by Miss Greta Thunberg, and she talks about climate change, global warming in a book which is published very recently, around November, December timeframe last year. Imagine a teenager, less than 20 today, from Sweden has succeeded in shifting the global attention around this topic. Now, taking a cue from this, right, Shailesh, to get you first onto the screen, what actions each of us as a corporate leadership, as well as at a personal level, like you and me, for example, what do we need to do from here now?
Thank you, Sanjay, for directing the first question to me. So, Greta has got a whole lot of outstanding people from all over the world to write in her book, which has just come out this year. And the message that I got reading through all of the wonderful writings in that book was, let's get serious about this issue. And let's all collaborate to make sure that we can save our planet, that we can actually take concrete actions in our day-to-day lives. For example, switch to LED. For example, stop using plastic on your desk. Make sure that you're always reminded, like I am, every time I drink this from this cup, I'm reminded of the 17 SDGs. It's a question of how can we integrate the whole thought process about the key things that can make a difference to our planet. So first lesson is, let us own up our responsibility. Second, let's have our own action plans at corporate level, at individual level, and at community level to make sure that we can make a difference to climate getting completely out of hand. We have seen so many instances, as have been described in this wonderful book in the last 1 year, that it is now very clear that it is human action which can turn the needle back from the Armageddon that we face if we continue along our past ways. That's the big lesson for all of us from the book.
Perfect. 2 points that I noted down, Shailesh. One of the things that she talks about with a statement which says, let me read this: hope is something you have to earn. How do you decipher this statement, Shailesh? Is this something that, as a young 20-year-old, has she given up on the world and that we are not doing anything? Is that something that I can derive from it?
No, not at all. Just the
Not at
exact
all.
reverse of that.
Exactly.
She's saying that she's so hopeful that at some point, all of us will fall in line And that's what her prayer has been. That's what her mission has been. That's what she's been trying to get people to do all the time.
Absolutely. Perfect. Right. You talked about management leadership owning the responsibility, right? And I would like to uh, get Prabodhaji onto the screen, right? And in your own capacity, Prabodhaji, as a chief sustainability officer, which is a huge role coming from steel industry, right? For you especially, this role generally has becoming an increasingly crucial in order to put the ESG at the heart of value creation for the organization as well as an absolute value for the customer. Now, in this environment, how a CSO and the other C-suite leaders will collaborate? Which are the top two or three elements that we must address?
Sanjay, thank you for the questions. But before I answer this question, what I do in the role of CSO and what is expected, uh, I think it is very clear is that sustainability is a crisis of our generation. And in fact, I'm not really worried about sustainability of the Mother Earth. I'm worried about the sustainability of the business and sustainability human race, because that's the question. How do we run the business in the right way so we can build a sustainable world where humans can thrive and live, so that sustainable business can thrive. So therefore, it is not possible to live sustainably if we erode and deplete our capitals, whether it is economic capital, whether it is social capital, whether it is environmental capital. And that is where, in a business context, specifically a group like JSW, where we are into steel, energy, cement, all manufacturing, transportations, logistics, paints, so every kind of manufacturing processes, it's actually the role of CSO is becoming important in the context. And you are absolutely right. Role of CSO is becoming context, important in the context of all businesses.
Yes.
In my view, the CSO is emerging as the organization's sense maker in chief. Whether we call it CSO, Chief Sustainability Officer, but he makes a sense out of what's happening outside the business that can impact your business activities. What's happening? What's the impact? Or what we do that can make a meaningful impact on the outside world. So that is why I called this is, we call it sense maker in the chief. And if you ask me what are the important two, three things what a CSO should do, in my belief, to start with, to make a sense of the external environment and bring insight back into the organizations, that what are the process changes, what are the change we need to do in the current business practices to adapt to those expected changes outside. World Economic Forum repeatedly, every last till last 5 years, all the top 500 CEOs telling that climate change inaction is going to be the topmost business risk. Out of the top five, top three are environmental related risk, and out of top 10, if you see, almost all are sustainability related risk. So that's important, and then taking that to your business strategy, making changes into your long-term business strategy is very important. And that is where CSO has an important role to make things together, to put one to one, and influence the decisions of the future, including the present, but more on the strategy side, so that the organization can reconfigure its business strategy. That is the second important thing. Third thing is, again, provide a thought leadership and help align teams by engaging, educating, connecting, so they see uh, how it is really impacting to the business. If I look at, we all know in a business nothing moves faster if it is not related to the finances. So therefore, it is very important that your CFO is aligned, and that is where, as a CSO, I have seen that bringing in sustainability linked finances to the organizations really works. What it does, the organization commits to do better in their sustainability performance, and therefore they attract finances in a cheaper rate. So that is where you can work with your CFO as a CEO. I mean, all things. And if you look at the CMOs, I mean, the marketing people, where the CSO has to work with them to design new kind of products and services which is eco-friendly, which is and sustainability questions, and that is where the CSO get engaged with marketing and sales people. Come to digitizations. It is very important that digitization drive the changes in the organization, and that is where possibly CSO has to make those thought process changes. If you look at the CTOs or the R&D heads, it has a very important role for CSO to influence what are the new technologies, specifically the manufacturing sector like us, do. So, in a sense, I can tell you that CSO has to touch upon each and every function of the organization to make the changes in which a business can thrive going forward.
Exactly. Well said. Two, 3 points that you said, Prabhudaji. One was the reconfiguration, one was about thought leadership, and then the third thing was about the finance availability. And I have a follow on question on the finance part. And what you mentioned is the way I'm able to understand is because as an industry, if you are very ESG compliant and a real player who follows ESG, it actually helps you to get finance if you're into the finance industry. Is that the way that I should understand this?
Uh, yes, and in addition to what I meant, that every organization needs finances for their growth.
Yes.
Now, there are various means to raise those finances, but if your ESG performance are better, then you attract finances easily.
Perfect.
And in other way, look, there are the instrument like green bonds, sustainability linked bonds, social linked bond, green
Yes.
loans, sustainability linked loans. There are various aspects. From an organization perspective, when you raise a sustainability linked finances for your organization, you also commit going ahead, you will improve your performances.
Yes.
And when you
Perfect.
commit those targets with your financial performances, then you will be in the right track. So as a CSO, I'll be happy to do that because that ensures me the entire organization will align to achieve the sustainability target. So that my job becomes easy as a
Perfect.
CSO.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Wonderful to have you, Professor Yadavji. Can you hear us, please, Ganapatiji? Ganapatiji, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes. Wonderful. We can see you as well as hear you. So we missed you in the introduction part. So, Ganapatiji, I would request you to just quickly self-introduce yourself so all our delegates can hear you and see you also from starting.
Yeah,
Please.
I'm Professor G.D. Yadav. I'm the former Vice Chancellor of Institute of Chemical Technology, formerly UDCT, ICT Mumbai. I'm currently the National Chair, Science Chair, appointed by the Government of India, and also Emeritus Professor of Eminence at ICT Mumbai. I hold 120 patents, guided 107 PhDs, 135 masters, written 515 papers, and develops many clean technologies. And one of the most important is green hydrogen, carbon dioxide conversion into methanol, dimethyl ether, and hydrocarbons, and biomass valorization. And I was very recently elected to the US National Academy of Inventors. I'm the second Indian to get that honor. And before
Amazing.
that, I was elected to the US National Academy of Engineering. There also, I'm one of the 21 elected in the 160 years history. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ganapatiji, for being here today. I appreciate it. And sir, let me again quickly get you onto the screen. What Prabhudaji talked about makes a lot of sense from the leadership perspective, especially the role of the CSO. Now, as any C-level professional, right? How a professional can balance and integrate the ESG objectives and the priorities to the organization's value chain model, right? The organizations need to make money, the top line, the bottom line. How do you encompass all this?
Yeah, very good question. You are asking me?
Yes, Professor Ji,
Okay,
yes.
if your question is general, anybody can answer. Of course, yes, everybody, whether he's a CEO or a general employee down the line, he has to be environmentally conscious, socially responsible, and you must maintain the ethical standards. That is the basic principle in ASD, right? So, since we are talking about environment, uh, of course, carbon neutral fuels or low carbon fuels is one of the objectives, reducing the greenhouse gases. And you know that in a country like India, where wood is used as a firewood, you can imagine the kind of carbon dioxide emissions we generate. In fact, the entire world generated last year 40 gigatons of carbon dioxide. And we have to reduce this entire thing to less than 10 gigatons. Then only we'll be able to maintain that 2 degrees Celsius limit or 1.5 degrees Celsius limit, which we have given for this particular century. So very, very important. That means we must have proper environmental management, and every company should do that, whether it is water management, land management, name it, building management, and the recycling processes, because tomorrow's world will be all recycling world. So do you
Yes.
have recycling technologies? Do you develop them? In fact, I say this jokingly to my students in chemical engineering that you will be recycle engineers tomorrow, where you will treat all materials, including energy, whether it is physical, chemical, or biological, to be recycled. Otherwise, one earth is not sufficient for us. That today's demand tells us that will require three, more than three earths. So that is very important. That means we have to be environmentally conscious, environmentally responsible. We have to be energy efficient, because a lot of energy is lost during transmission. So and of course this climate change we talk about. So that is very, very important. And in today's world, and when we talk about social angle to this ESG priorities in organization, you have to be inclusive, you have to be gender sensitive, you must value human rights and whatnot, and that is what the SGD goals are telling. And of course, and since I sit on 6 boards, I know the ethical standards of the board, and the governance model must
Yes.
be very, very good. There must be diversity on the board. There will be lady members on the board and whatnot. Now the BSE tells everybody that they must have the right balance of the independent directors, okay,
Yes.
and not the promoters. So, and this is very important. And if you want to promote any policy, you have to engage with the political class, whether you
Yes.
like it or not, because they are ultimately making the legislations and whatnot. So I
Yes.
think everybody has a role to play in this ESG priorities.
Absolutely. Well said. And Shailesh ji also alluded to almost very similar thought process in the first question, and then Prabodhar ji also had very similar kind of a comment. Wonderful. We have first question within the first 25 minutes of our webinar, which is great. And question is addressed to you, Prabodhar ji. Somebody with an unknown person, I think, is would like to know any specific sustainable supply chain initiative undertaken by JSW.
See, Sanjay ji, I mean, that's a very good question, in fact. First of all, supply chain need to be sustainable to build a sustainable business. Because if you
Yes.
don't have the both the downstream and upstream supply chain, and I believe the question is mostly towards the downstream supply chain.
Downstream.
So yeah, so if you don't have that, so your business will get affected. So the fundamentals are required that you ensure work with your supplier. They
Yes.
are able to supply you the quality of materials that you need in time so that you can run your business. But that is not good enough. Only looking at quality, cost, available in just in time, it's not really good enough. So therefore, we need to ensure that if what are those sustainability issues which could impact, are they being taken care? Like in JSW, we have developed a supplier code of conduct that everybody to adhere to, and these are based on all international standards which are available, and that we ensure that any supplier wants to do a business with JSW, he has to first sign that he will meet all those requirements. That is the first step, because I always believe you don't if you don't get things in written, it will
Yeah,
never get implemented. So the first stage is to get it writing. So once we get
perfect.
it writing, next is that we ask for the self assessment, that
Yeah,
where do you stand as per you against our requirements, and then obviously it has to be audited and it has to be fact finding. That is
perfect.
how supply chain sustainability is getting driven. uh, and,
Absolutely.
and COVID has opened eyes of everybody how important it is to ensure
Yeah,
supply chain remains sustainable, to have a sustainable business, otherwise your business will get into affected. And
absolutely.
and you're right in your comment, which you stated, that every business remains sustainable when you have a positive bottom line. The question is that how you get that bottom line in.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And it is unfortunate that we need to have had a COVID to actually realize the value of how important supply chain is, right? It was there always, nothing had changed, but it is just that one COVID had pushed everybody off the cliff. So thank you. Thank you, Prerna, for asking that question. Really appreciate it. You talked
Sanjay,
about supply chain.
I would
Yes,
like
Dr.
to
Ji,
add. Yeah, I would like to add what
please add.
estimated.
Dr. Ji, your voice is not very clear. Yeah,
Uh,
you're kind of trailing off in between sometimes. Yeah, that will be good.
is okay now?
Yes, this is better, far better.
Okay, so first of all, as a Indian culture, let me thank my guru who is sitting there, Dr. Yadav. This is Umesh sir, and namaste to you, sir.
Good
And then
afternoon.
I will continue my thing. Sir, what Prerna has asked and what Prabodha has replied to, I would like to add two more things in that. Because JSW is wholly dependent upon supply chain management and with ESG, and there are two ways that they have to deal with. That is a carbon footprint analysis, which goes with cradle to gate and cradle to grave. So
Sure.
cradle to gate refers to the carbon impact of a product from moment it's produced to the moment it enters the store or a factory, for as it is a JSW. And cradle to grave is to the full carbon footprint, to get it accountable for. So these are the two impacts of the material, impact of production and impact of shipping to store. This is what JSW must be looking after with their production team as well as the supply chain team, sir.
Absolutely.
No,
Well,
no,
well
no,
said,
absolutely.
Umesh.
I'll just second it. It is absolutely imperative that the carbon footprint is looked at from cradle to grave.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
But look, if you consider JSW to be primarily a steel producer, then in fact we become a scope 3 for many industries, and my
yes,
scope 3 is relatively very less, but nonetheless that we are focused on that. So we looked at what is the carbon emissions during the mining stage, during the
yeah,
transportation there, during the handling of the materials, and we look at it. But we work on a collaborations with the big
sure.
supplier, because many times we are responsible for more emissions than they are.
Absolutely, and your customers as well. Wonderful
most of the
comment.
most of the most of the industries which I see, sir, there is a long waiting queue of the trucks or the containers for loading and unloading, and nowadays they are into the very idling machine condition. Earlier days it was very difficult to tell them to stop the engine, nahi humko jana hai, humko karna hai, वगैरह type of things. But nowadays the things are reversing, and I think it's a people like JSW are promoting such kind of things.
Perfect. And Prabhutaji, you said something about your own supply chain has to be sustainable in order to actually manage sustainability, which means as an organization, you should be able to identify key risk and issues. And this is where I would like Dr. Umesh to come on screen and say, Umesh, identifying material issues for an organization is absolutely critical today, right? And
Yes.
given this whole understanding, right, what Prabodhaji alluded to earlier, do Indian companies specifically, right, have a matured assessment model to identify the most relevant ESG issues affecting them? And why I'm saying Indian is because I'm more interested in our own geography, and we have more than 50% of medium and small enterprises. How about them? Do they really have a matured model to assess their own environment?
Yes, if you see of late or lately, these industries, whether it is a small scale, medium scale, or the large scale, they are identifying their own material age issues, and they are trying to implement in a very well addressing into their day-to-day working also, like identifying the key stakeholders, then brainstorm material issues, design and conduct material survey. They do a lot of kind of thing, analyze the surveys insights, create and execute an action plan. So I do I agree to that. In last 5 to 10 years, this is on rise, and it is going to be a key issue in next 10 years, sir.
Perfect. Wonderful. There is a question which says, how do you monitor and control that your suppliers deliver on what they sign for? I would like to come to Prabodhaji because steel has a lot of manufacturing, has 1,000 suppliers, right? Would you like to take up this question?
I think that's a very good question, in fact, and very valid questions. Let me be very honest with you. As I stated, that first you have to get things in writing, but then you have to have a monitoring mechanism to ensure that what has been signed and is being delivered, and that is where there is a gap. So therefore, we have to have a system for supply chain management and assessment. What we have done, not only we have given a policy statement, we have given all the documentation necessary, we have an internal standard made, and that's part of that standard. First phase, we will ask supplier to again self comply. It's like a kind of self assessment against the requirement, and then selectively, if somebody is telling they have a high level of conformance, we'll go back and get it checked by external auditor or by internal auditor, so that it get. But let me tell you, we are in the process. We have not yet matured in the process, let's be honest with you. So we are looking at designing the system right and start this process. We have some time to go. So I hope, by next year when I come and speak to you, I should be able to confirm that we have done it. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And we talked about scope three, which does base scope three, because Prabhudaji, you spoke about it, Dr. Umeshi brought it. So I would like to bring on Ganapatiji onto the screen, and more from a decarbonization, because you also spoke about it, Ganapatiji. Especially in the shipping industry, is probably the most challenging. I'm a logistician. I'm a supply chain professional for over 40 years, so I really understand it. Right? It faces growing calls by their shareholders, regulators, stakeholders, everybody. In this scenario, what is the role that a shipping company and their boards, for example, the 3PL, the 4PL, and even the shippers and the CEOs can play? And is there a financial institution or a banks that can help them in this journey? Ganapatiji.
Yeah, very good question. Shipping industry, normally what happens, the shipping industry produces about 2.5% of global greenhouse gases. And that reason being, obviously, they use tons and tons of oil, okay, as a fuel. So you have to use renewable resources as a fuel. Sometimes people talk about biofuels, maybe ethanol based or any other biofuel, or in biofuel also you have the fermentation or the first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation. But these are carbon neutral. In fact, you require carbon negative, like hydrogen and ammonia. So hydrogen based fuel cells. So hydrogen is directly being used as a fuel. So that will reduce the impact on an environment. So particularly in shipping industry, that is very, very important. And same is the case with green ammonia. So it is not just green hydrogen, but green ammonia, because green ammonia can be stored at a lesser pressure. For example, 10 atmosphere vis-a-vis hydrogen, which may require anywhere between 300 and 700 atmospheres. So yes, green hydrogen, green ammonia, and the vessels must be equipped with that. That is one of the ways to go ahead to reduce the impact of greenhouse gas effect. And there are many ways, even some part of the energy, you can have solar energy or wind energy, whatever. But in general, we are talking about, carbon neutral energy source. Okay,
Yes.
once you have, then what about battery operation? Can we use batteries for shortest distances? So you require heavy duty batteries, So yes, of course that can be used. So that is one of the ways. So that battery also requires energy. So you require electricity. That means that electricity has to be either produced by solar energy, wind energy, or hydro, or nuclear, whatever, on ground. So that is one of the ways by which the shipping industry's impact, which I mentioned earlier about 2.5%, can be
Yes.
brought down. And so that realization is now, coming into picture. Like the shipping, another area is the aviation industry, right? Both of
Yeah.
these contribute to atmospheric pollution, and
Absolutely.
therefore green fuel, particularly hydrogen, green hydrogen will be a very effective, and green ammonia, both will be
Yes.
very, very effective as carbon neutral fuels for shipping industry. Then of course you can design better, though you can improve the energy efficiency of the shipping business and all sorts of things. In fact, certain places, they talk about whether you should carry empty ships back. Why should you carry empty? Can you do something else? That has been being talked about in certain places. So, but yes,
Yes.
shipping industry, we can definitely reduce the impact, and it is possible. So there is no issue about that.
Perfect.
And so we can talk on and on about shipping industry.
Sure. Okay. Good. Uh, Moving from shipping industry to actual shipper and then getting Shailesh onto the screen. Shailesh, in terms of greenwashing, that this is a term that we have been hearing very much in prominence for the last 2, 3 years now. It was always there. But what is actually greenwashing for the benefit of all of us? And how I myself, as a manufacturer or as a consumer, can differentiate between an organization which is involved in greenwashing, for example, versus which one which is genuinely investing in sustainable products. How do I decipher that?
Very, very important question, because just this morning, a report was released which indicates that in 87% of the reports on sustainability, greenwashing of some kind or the other was discovered.
Oh
Now,
my God.
that is an extremely high percentage. What is greenwashing? It is stating or overstating your contribution. I loved the formulation of Professor Yadav when he talked about you'll have to do complete recycling. Now, it is, let us say that you are reporting on some recycling initiative and you are, let's say, recycling some of the plastic that you have collected out of your own efforts. Now, if you overstate the input output ratio from the plastic that you're trying to recycle to your end product, then you are doing what is called greenwashing.
Okay.
So you are not actually performing the role of reducing the impact on the planet, and you are still claiming it. But let me give you 4 or 5 instances of out of the box ideas that people are now using to first reduce their footprint and then making sure that the reporting is correct.
Yeah.
To make sure reporting is correct, it is important to switch from the idea of data entry to data set capture as it arises. Therefore, all measurements in the future will happen as the physical flow of materials, of energy, of everything that you are using in the whole supply chain gets consumed. If you do that, then it is, and if it is blockchain, then you have no chance of over reporting or under reporting, and that will be a
Yes.
great dampener on greenwashing. But let's say you want to disrupt your supply chain completely, and this is what at least one cement group in the country is thinking about.
Yeah.
Then why not have around the country 50 or so large plants, but have the grinding units across the entire set of coastline that India has? so
Yes.
that the distance that the material has to travel to the end consumer gets seriously reduced. That is an example of domestic supply chain reimagination, which can dramatically alter the amount of footprint, as Mr. Yadav, Dr. Yadav mentioned, from cradle to grave. So
Wonderful.
these are the ways in which you can identify greenwashing, reduce it, and make sure that your measurement systems are such that they will automatically produce accurate data to be reported.
First class. And the example that you give, Shailesh, about the cement company and most of the other cement company, and as a function we say shared services. So this is something like a vision where shared functionality, where the common functionalities like the grinding can be utilized by one and all under one umbrella. So everybody doesn't have to invest their own money and create an infrastructure. We can erode our environment, whereas we can have them made in one location, and you can reduce the impact, or you can actually limit the impact to one location, almost like a shared services model that generally we run at an organization level. Sorry, Shailesh, there is a question which came in and which pertains to exactly what you said. The question is wondering, is there a global organization or an association which can coordinate prompt sharing of this green technology and measuring it as a common initiative?
Absolutely. You know, this is one area where the whole world has got together to actually make sure that the standards of reporting and the frameworks of reporting will all get commonalized. All of this is today being housed under the International Sustainability Standards Board in London. It is part of the IASB. But what is happening is that there is a convergence happening in both frameworks for reporting as well as the standards based on which you will
Now
report
clearly, sir.
all the information that you need to provide in your regulatory reports on sustainability. So there is a ISSB that we need to keep watching out for. It'll be the fastest issuer of standards on sustainability that the world has ever seen. In 2 years' time, we will have a common framework and very, very good standards of measurement.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Good to see the 2 years window, if that can be shortened. 2 years is not very far. At least we have some path to the solution, at least now, right, from a reporting perspective. Excellent. From a greenwashing, let's move on to green corridors. It's the same kind of terminology, right? But obviously there's a difference. And getting Dr. Umeji onto the screen. Umeji, what are green corridors? And especially in India, how do we establish this process? Do we need to incentivize the players, or do we need to create a public-private partnerships to say so?
Certainly, with today's era of having tremendous growth in the infrastructure projects, and most of these projects are they go through the either wildlife habitat or they go through the habitat corridor. The green corridor has become a very must and important, which is the thin strip of land that provides sufficient habitat to support wildlife. I'll give you one of the latest examples in the Samruddhi Mahamarg, which is from Nagpur to Mumbai. And I was very happy to see that Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, Government of India, they made it mandatory for the project proponent, that is MSRDC, to leave or have green corridors, planned for their 701 kilometer of, because it is passing through a great amount of wildlife, great amount of forest, and to their satisfaction, MSRDC did follow all these green corridor things, and they have now coming out with the green corridor, sir. There are a lot of examples which the small green corridors, and there are benefits. Definitely, there is a benefit of that, which increases the biodiversity. Then there is a non-polluting mobility. There is a reduction in the noise pollution in the city, prevent heat island effect, whatever we nowadays call. Then in incentivizing the uh, Indian, that you can see the Indian Railways has taken the initiative, that
Yeah.
to start the green rail corridors. That is the most important by this central government. Green corridor even now aimed at contributing towards the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, that is initiated by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji. To your knowledge, that the Northwestern Railway has also declared the uh, and then in Rajasthan two big green corridors. Even in the state of Gujarat, they have given the green corridor. So the importance of green corridor has now become very prominent, and I think that every project which is non-urbanized or going through the non-urbanized areas should have the green corridors uh, for the uh, for the betterment from this kind of thing.
Sure. And Dr. Ji, from a
Yes.
maritime green corridor, right? India has amazing waterways. Do you think there is a possibility that we can actually start using the maritime green corridors in some or other lanes, right? Into south lane, we have coastline on the western side, right until the Gujarat. Is there a possibility of doing that? Because if you see the Pan American ways or some of the Australian and Singapore kind of Pacific ways, they're already in practice. Some of these. Can we do that in India on the domestic waterways?
Uh, Definitely, we can try it, but with a lot of local issues with the fisher folks and that kind of issues which are cropping up in India makes a bit difficult. So I feel on the other way around, that making it or planning it is easier than implementing it because of these local issues.
Sure.
And the government should be very government is proactive in that, but then a lot of political interference certainly play a big role, in making such kind of green marine corridors.
Exactly, green marine corridor. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Umesh. Uh, from green corridors, from washing to corridors, let's move on to circularity of supply chain. And Prabodhaji, talking specifically about steel industry, right? Contrary to generally what we feel, steel is highly recyclable, is durable as well, and I would say relatively requires less energy relatively to produce as compared to many other commodities. And generally, steel industry in India has made an immense effort to limit the environmental pollution. We are actually one of the leading steel industry makers in the world, right? With your rich experience in this industry, can you talk about the circularity of value chain?
Can
Thank
can
you
I
very
can
much.
I just can I just add to this? Can I just add to this, Sanjay, please?
Sure, please go ahead, Dr. Ji.
Prabodhaji, I would love to have a reply of what Sanjay ji has asked, along with the double materiality, which is now playing a big role. So the materiality is the effect of climate change on finance and corporate activities, and the vice
Yes.
versa is the double. So or even the people who have joined will be definitely uh, happy to know from the person who is implementing this. So if you can throw some light on the double materiality vis-a-vis, what Sanjay ji has asked, will be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that additional question as well. Uh, okay, let me first clarify. There are two things here when you talk about circularity.
Yes.
One, circularity of the material itself. So, Sanjay ji,
Yes.
you are absolutely right. Steel is 100% recyclable material. That means the first steel made by the mankind is still in use, and the recyclability of the steel is the largest of any material you see. So therefore,
Yes.
steel does not lose its value and it can be recycled infinite time. So that's the circularity of the material itself. But what is important is that steel industry, how they are supporting the circular economy itself. Uh, See, to make 1 ton of steel, you require almost 4 ton of materials. So what
Yes.
happens? So question is that what happens to the rest 3 million ton? You produce only 1 million ton of steel, and
Yeah.
that is where I believe steel industry is a industry which supports circular economy in totality.
Hmm.
Whether it is a gas which is coming out, say whether it is a coke, there is a process called coke making, there is a iron making process, there is a
Sure.
steel making process, there is agglomeration process. All the gases which comes out become an energy source and supports the energy transition and energy industry. All the dust which has come out of the chimneys, which looks like a visible pollutions, they are captured and put into agglomerations and become a raw material. The so-called waste material from the process which comes out, whether it is a iron making or steel making, the excellent example is the steel iron making slag which comes out become excellent input material for cement making. And Shailesh was talking about example of how the cement making can be decentralized with calcination plant in one place and grinding place in other. In JSW Cement, we have done it. We have only one integrated cement plant where we do the clinkerization, and all those clinker gets grinded all over the India, where we mix all those waste coming out of the blast furnace and becomes the cement. Similarly, all the slags which is coming from this steel melting processes, these are basically the waste. I'm giving account of those 4 million ton which comes, 3 million
Yes.
ton waste which is coming out. And and there we are doing a manufacturing sand, we are doing soil conditioner, we are making pelletizations. So in a sense, if some material comes from the steel industries doesn't go out, it has a value. We don't call anything as a waste, we call it byproduct or co-product. So steel is the main product, rest all are product having economy value and they get utilized. But we have not stopped there. I mean, one of the even the material which is getting wasted from outside the steel operations, we all know, plastic is a nuisance and how it is creating a lot of environmental issues. We started thinking and using whether we can use plastics in steel making, so we solve not only solve a industry environmental issue, but that becomes a byproduct for the steel making processes. And there is an example, if you can run that to show how plastics generated outside from the society are being collected and used in the steel making processes. So in a sense, steel industry is a very good example of building circular economy, and now we are increasingly integrating circularity into all policies, all strategies when we talk about sustainability strategy or ESG strategy. Akash, if you can run that quickly, the video.
Ab- Absolutely, Akash.
The Indian steel industry in recent decades has shown phenomenal growth. JSW Steel Limited is one of the fastest growing steel plants in India and has adopted the best practices and technologies available to mitigate the adverse environmental impact. With the increasing use of plastics, its sustainable reuse and recycling has become a serious environmental challenge. Their in-house pilot-scale trials confirmed the sustainability of using plastics in electric arc furnace as a partial replacement of coke fines. EAF utilizes coke fines to increase the foaming behavior of its slag for stable arcing and reduced arcing time. A new technology to recycle plastics in electric arc furnace as a foaming agent has been developed and implemented by JSW Steel. This process helps in reducing approximately 1,000 tons of carbon dioxide emissions annually due to reduced coke fines usage, in addition to the reduction in usage of carbon-bearing materials. The project also resulted in annual cost savings of 1.97 million Indian rupees.
So you see, this is an excellent example where the wastes are becoming an enabler in reducing the cost and also reducing one of the important GHG emissions, and that is that is very important. And now we are extending that and working on how we can use in other processes like iron making and coke making. One
Yeah.
correction I want to make here, Sanjay ji. Let me admit here, steel industry is not a low energy industry. Steel
Yeah.
industry, in fact, is an energy intensive process. So we
Hmm.
really consume a lot of energy, and therefore we are also responsible for a lot of GHG emissions. And therefore, our focus now, what all possible ways to reduce our energy consumptions and the GHG emissions. And circularity is one of the biggest lever in promoting reductions in GHG emissions and energy consumptions.
First class. Now, Prabhuji, let me kind of give a googly to you, right? A curveball. This is something controlled by JSW. This is your own responsibility. Are there any processes which are outside of JSW, and how do you manage, for example?
Now, if you look at in this, if you look at the plastics itself, the generation of plastic is not within JSW; it's outside.
Yes, is
So
outside.
we have to develop a proper supply chain to ensure that it is available at the right quality and quantity so that it can be used. So that itself is a challenge, and that is where our foundation is working on that supply chain. And that supply chain is actually involves improving the social aspect, the economic conditions of the people who are used to collect those plastics. So it is a holistic sustainability issue management, not only reducing carbon emissions. We are also looking at how we can improve the quality of the people involved in the supply chain. And plastic collection in India is normally handled by rack pickers, we call. I mean, they are the low income strata, and our importance first started how we can work holistically in the supply chain.
Absolutely. Well, great video, great answer, Prabhudaji. Fantastic. Uh, Moving on from a shipper, maybe outside the scope of a shipper, and getting Professor Ganapatiji onto the screen, specifically Ganapatiji talking about scope 3 emissions, right? And there's a question as well on scope 3 emissions from one of our delegates, which says, please share insights on the challenges and solutions in reporting scope 3. And my question, the one that is very similar, is how do you measure these, right? Because these are very difficult since most activities happen outside the purview of an organization. So, what kind of an ecosystem or an infrastructure that an organization requires in order to accurately manage and control their scope 3 emissions? Ganapati ji.
I will answer his question in part to what Mr. Acharya said. Steel industry is a highly polluting industry. For example, 2.38 tons of carbon dioxide are emitted per ton of steel produced. And I think India will produce about 120 million tons 2020 to 2022, and it is likely to go to 300 million tons by 2030. So steel industry is not only highly energy intensive industry but highly polluting industry. So part of the solution, he said that you can use plastic, but plastic is not the solution. Green hydrogen is the solution, which will totally take care of it. And plastic can be converted into repolymerize, upcycling, downcycling, all those, where again green hydrogen will play a role. As far as the emissions are concerned, the so-called scope 3 emissions, that means they are indirect emissions. You are not responsible for that. Maybe you are a company where you don't deal it, but you have upstream activities and downstream activities which involve some of these things, maybe transportation, maybe by railway, maybe by truck, maybe by aeroplane, and similarly your goods are transported. So the logistic is different. Direct is means where you are doing something and emitting carbon dioxide,
Yes.
like I mentioned, CO2. Yes, there are standards. And one of the standards which is talked about is ISO 14064, which is international standard.
Yeah.
And it's like the other ISO 14000 or ISO 9000. So you have ISO 14064 1, 2, and then you can go to 3, and then 65, 66, 67. And in 67, you develop carbon-free processes. So that has to be done. So for example, suppose you are in a logistic company and transporting steel from one place to another place. You know how much carbon dioxide is likely to be emitted by your vehicle
Yeah.
when you are transporting it. So you get some general idea. Okay. And since these are international standards, there are agencies which can do that job for you. So that is not a big issue. Yes, normally people who are involved in logistics, they may not look at it because people will think the direct pollution which is done by the factories and all, that is the category 1 or the scope 1. Okay, this is direct. Scope 3 is indirect. Okay, you may not measure it yourself, but because you are transporting. In the so-called life cycle analysis, we do that. In life cycle analysis, we have to take care of every carbon which is going out as carbon dioxide, whether it is excavation to final disposition. So there are standards, and in fact, there's this international panel on climate change. They have developed methodology for greenhouse gas measurement. So these standards do exist in today's world. It is not unknown. It is known and well established. But there are agencies which are outside your company who are doing this job.
Wonderful.
And I
Sanjay,
incidentally,
with your-
I develop a green hydrogen process where I can produce hydrogen less than $1. And I have queries from some steel companies.
Oh, wonderful.
Mm.
Yes.
Lovely.
Sanjay, in addition to others saying that ISO standard 15064, there are four.
Yeah, your voice is a bit low, Rupaji. Yeah. Oh, gone.
Okay. If I may chip in, Sanjay ji, here, because
Please,
we are not-
Prabhudaji, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, Umesh, you can fix it and come back.
First of all, Yadav ji, I am really excited that you can now provide me a green hydrogen less than $1. I am your customer right now. Thank you very much for that.
Actually, I have a query from Jindal.
Yeah, Jindal, we are just Jindals.
Yeah, I have also from Tata Steel, and I also from Fatida, and my project is supported by ONGC.
We will discuss
Yeah.
that after this. Thank
So
you
they
very
told
much.
me that Jindal is interested. I said, very good.
No. That is where I'm too excited. If somebody gives me less than $1 today, I can take it. Sanjay ji, responding to question in addition to Professor Yadav's inputs, the
Yeah.
first thing is that we, from an industry practitioner point of view, we do not monitor scope 3 emissions. In
Yes.
fact, as an industry, we don't monitor any GHG. We calculate GHGs. Let me
Okay.
honest. So there are two processes normally industry uses. There is something
Yes.
called activity data multiplied with emission factor.
Yes.
Most people uses emission factor, which is national average. If you don't have international average, and you
Perfect.
take estimate of your activity data. In scope 3 particularly, it is a challenge. When you do not have sector specific or national or industry specific emission factors established, then you go to a higher level of international emission factor, which is very average. So what I'm telling, the level of uncertainty in calculating scope 3 is very high, and therefore I really do not understand who has made the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. In my view, there has to be only one scope. Monitor your emissions, reduce your emissions. Then the
Yeah.
problem is solved.
Yeah.
And-
Wonderful. Yeah.
And to
Stay
add,
there, Prabhudaji.
for the advanced information, now it is being taught, and we are in a phase to develop scope 4 emissions. That is
Yes.
avoided emissions.
You
We'll
know,
talk about
yes.
that later. Thank you.
Perfect. And before Umesh, you come into the picture, Prabhudaji, still one more question to you from Mr. Lee from Singapore. I know him very well. And he says there are many sustainability standards, GRI, ISB, IFC, CDP. Just now, Prabhudaji, you talked about that there are certain standards which you really cannot report. These are averaged out internationally, nationally. Given that scope, what is really is there a feasibility of one or two common standards within your industry and outside? Can we have that sort of a situation in the next 2-3 years?
I think that question is already addressed by Shailesh ji. When he
Yes.
told that how ISSB is standardizing the process. But when you look at the international standard, all standards are not addressing the same issues. Some
Yes.
are reporting standard.
Yes, like
some are-
GRI.
Yes,
GRI.
like GRI. It's a reporting standard. And
Perfect.
many of the organizations are following and making that as a base. Like what you are getting BRSR, which
Yeah.
is based on NGRBC in India, is a reporting requirement.
Yes.
But there are some strategic standards, like TCFD. It's a strategic standard. It
Yeah.
helps to build your strategy to climate change management, and also helps you reporting climate change related risk and
Wonderful.
opportunity. So it,
Wonderful.
There is a one more important thing is that the corporate accounting and reporting standard if Lee can go through this, I think that will be more helpful, because this is accountability, and this is also reporting. So this,
Yeah.
the corporate accounting and reporting standard, that will be more helpful for balancing act for accountability as well as the reporting standard. Because as you
Yes.
rightly said, there are various things which are reporting, which are just accounting, so nothing hand in glove it together. But this particular, the corporate accounting and reporting standard, will be useful for Mr. Lee, who has asked the question, to
Sure.
go through it.
Perfect.
And,
Umesh,
and
you
what
were
I
saying
was,
something. Yeah.
Sanjay, what I was concluding,
Yeah.
this there are multiple standards, they address different requirements, but I completely agree with the questioner that there is a need for unification and standardizations for the aspect. If we have reporting, then we might think of one reporting standard instead of multiple reporting standards. So
Exactly.
yes, there is
Perfect.
a need of standardization. I think world is already taking steps. Shailesh is the right person to talk about it.
Yes. Absolutely.
Well,
Excellent.
I don't have much to add to that debate. I think convergence is necessary, but I do want to talk about heuristics in scope 3.
Yeah.
It is very important that all of us take on board that in India at least, we will soon see what is called BRSR Lite, which is being designed for simpler organizations, which are just part of a supply chain. We must realize that scope 3 emissions are in many instances between 75 and 85% of all emissions that a company is actually responsible for.
Yeah.
And therefore, it is critical that some way be found to estimate, if we cannot measure it accurately, because the small organizations which are in the supply chain do not have the resources to do that. And so we would have to unleash the forces of collaboration, innovation, acceptance of technology, and change of mindset to make sure that we get to what Prabuddhaji was talking about, that we need to completely eliminate the carbon footprint that we are causing. And one of the ideas that I'm also a great believer in is green hydrogen, green ammonia, and ultimately we will see some version of fusion which will enable us to lick the problem of greenhouse gases altogether.
Yeah.
So, great votary of that.
Exactly. And thank you, Shailesh. And keeping you onto the screen and kind of turning the subject a bit different angles is something that I'm hearing: sustainable agriculture. And Shailesh, India is used to traditional farming so far, and how as a nation we will transition to this new approach? Yes, government has some schemes which I heard recently was the Pradhan Mantri Krisi Sinchai Yojana, right? PKSY will play a big role. But how do we transition to this? And what are the pathways to the success that you're looking at it, sir?
So I'll share with everybody a wonderful experiment that is today being done in a place called Parli by an organization called Global Parli in Maharashtra. The idea is that we need to wean people away from high water consuming crops, which are one, completely destructive of the environment, using up a very scarce resource like water, and not even good in terms of the output that they generate. So, for example, if you were to go on a sugar fast, the first thing that you will have to eliminate is your consumption of wheat and rice. So, therefore, what is this experiment doing? It is talking about how do you change the habits and the allocation of land to appropriate crops, which will be sustainable in the long run from the point of view of input consumption and from the point of view of energy released from the output. In addition to that, multi-cropping is being considered to bring in vegetables, exotic vegetables also, and fruits to make sure that the right mix of food that we need to produce for good energy, good health, and good immunity comes into being. That is an experiment which is highly replicable, can be performed in many, many parts, not only of India, but of the whole world. And let's not forget that the world is now beginning to see the massive benefits of hydroponics, aeroponics, greenhouse cultivation, and farming, which is on steroids, really, because you take care of it through using machine learning and artificial intelligence. Because then you give micronutrients and micro water to the plant as it needs it and as it demands it. Today, a whole lot of the water and the nutrients that we are using are simply wasted because the plant can't absorb it. And that is being changed by bringing in this technology of hydroponics and aeroponics. This is a very major contribution that the world can actually receive from agri innovation.
Absolutely. And just to take this thought through, Shailesh, to produce 1 kg of sugarcane, we require almost very close to 200 liters. And that means we need to make a concentrated effort in India now to stop eating sugar. So it will solve two problems. The diabetes may go away and our water will be conserved. Hopefully, we can do all that. It's a huge population.
Absolutely. Diabetes is a pandemic in India, much
Absolutely,
larger
right?
than COVID, much larger than COVID, 7x
Exactly.
of COVID. So we
Absolutely.
need to
So,
get rid of it.
yes. And moving away from agriculture, but still on the same track of sustainability and maybe uh, investing in carbon, right? We talked about agriculture also. So, Umeshji, some thought about it, right? Is investing in carbon as a new asset class? The logic behind this investment is that the exposure can act to the portfolio as a diversifier, allowing investors to a way to price carbon risk in their portfolio. How far we are from now? Are our financial and banking institutes are on the track for this? Is it something that we're thinking? You're mute.
Sorry.
Yes.
As you rightly asked, sir, our financial institutions are not yet fully ready or to cope up with this kind of situation. So I think it is really still primitive stage, and to overcome this problem will take some more time.
Exactly. I could guess that. Yeah. Wonderful. So, Dr. Ji, you had a comment when Shailesh talked about green farming, right? And I wanted your views on that. If I kind of extrapolate that, right? If everything is going to become green, right? Green farming emissions coming down, right? Steel manufacturing, for example, we talked about. So we need to build a green collar workforce, right? And with rapid decarbonization in everywhere, manufacturing sector as well as 3PLs and service providers in the next 5 years, we require a workforce which will drive the economies and the scale to net zero. Do you think we have a senior leadership now, an experienced one to cultivate and grow the future leaders?
I think whatever reply I'm going to give now may not go ahead well with Prabhuda or Shailesh ji, but the senior leadership today, I don't think the generation next is really ready with the green collar workforce, sir. Because people, they all these the age group of, you can say, 25 to 40, they all talk about, they know ESG, they know this, they know that, but when you really talk to them, interact with them, then you come to know how they are deep into this. But then it requires a lot of efforts for this generation to uh, really make them into a green collar workforce, sir. Because it is going to be a time for right from the blue collar job to white collar job, and now it's a green collar job. And I think it is imperative that the senior leadership should impart knowledge based seminars, knowledge based curricula into this, and to make it really environmentally conscious design policy and technology to improve this kind of job fraternity, because it requires really a formal knowledge, formal implementation, or formal experience into creating this kind of green collar workforce. Because anything and everything related to environmental conservation is a green force job or a green collar workforce, but actually to deal with the climate change and the green collar workforce is a different story, because there are about 15 16 type of the jobs which call as a green collar workforce, but really to tackle the ongoing issues with the climate change and that kind of green collar workforce, I still doubt that we really have right now ready to tackle them.
Okay. All right.
No, can I
Shailesh, any
just come
thoughts
in
on that?
there? Yeah,
Yes,
I'll
please.
just come in there. It's very important that I make this intervention.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm very happy to tell this audience that the Homi Bhabha University, and Charu was with me when we heard this from the Vice Chancellor himself,
Yes.
is actually launching a course on ESG.
Ah,
And
fantastic.
my recommendation to them was that put it in the metaverse and also make it largely publicly available at extremely low cost or at maybe no cost. And he was very, very open to accept that recommendation. So while I agree that we don't have the necessary awareness and the learning infrastructure today, I'm sure that in the next 1 or 2 years, this is going to be a reality.
So
Absolutely.
that's what Shailesh I was referring to, that there is nothing concrete or there is a formal education along with the experience, so that I think Professor Yadav sir and you, people like you and even Prabodha, definitely can make a difference in next 2 years, because I'm really worried, because as a consulting group, when I receive the CVs of people, and if they write lot many things. I know ESG, I know ECG, I know climate change, and when you really
Understood.
talk to them, it's bit worrisome thing.
Yeah.
I don't feel that they, I
No,
don't
it's
belittle them. I
it's
don't belittle them also, because
Yeah.
they want to have a job, but just having a job
correct.
and really to take care of the climate change and to call yourself as a green collar workforce, these are three different issues, sir. These are three
Yeah.
definitely materiality. This is the materiality for us to look into this, and I think
Perfect.
we have to, and I'm ready with any kind of my help for this kind of thing, because
Fantastic.
I see them very very grim situation, sorry to say, but it is.
Yeah, wonderful. And Shailesh is staying with you on that. You talked about from an academic perspective, right? You talked about the institute, and I know Charu kind of we had a discussion on that last week. She actually told me she met you. So taking that thought forward, there is a question which aligns now in your discussion is with ESG rapidly growing in India, who is leading the push? Is it, for example, the institutional investors? Is it the government, or is the venture capital investors? What do you think, sir?
Very fortunately for us in India, the government is extremely serious.
Yes.
For the government to have chosen ESG as one of the frontiers in its leadership of the G20 is itself a huge indicator of the government's intent. So I must give full marks to the government of India, led by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, for the amazing thrust that the government is giving. Add to that the tremendous leadership that is being displayed by our very large industrialists, and Sajan Jindal is one of them. He's
Yeah.
really a symbol. He is a symbol. Mr. Adani is a symbol. Mr. Mukesh Ambani is a symbol. All of them want to make sure that this whole idea, and all of them are competing with each other to get to the highest ranks in DSJI. So in every annual report, you'll read about their ranks on DSGI. Why is that the case? It is because everybody aspires to do better in terms of environmental footprint. So the industrialists are on board. The NGOs are phenomenally on board. I can
Yeah.
sense that the extent of work that is being done in India is absolutely stunning. And we should be proud of the way that we have embraced SDGs, all the 17 SDGs, and the way that industry, government partnering is happening across the board to make sure that this becomes real. There's a long way to go, but the start is fabulous.
Yeah. And Shailesh, can we say that given the breadth and the depth of our country from a geographical as well as population spread, I feel the amount of knowledge and kind of a resonation with ESG is way higher than some of the Western world. Would that be a right statement to make?
You know, I wish that is not true because the largest emission action has to be taken by the Western world. And even if we were to take all this action, we are
Yeah.
not going to be able to actually limit the increase in temperature to 1.5
Yes.
degrees Celsius
Exactly.
unless the whole world starts becoming serious about it.
Yes. Perfect, perfect. Let's talk about the carbon neutral. We talked about the carbon as an asset class, and then Prabhataji, moving over to you and getting you onto the screen and talking about any breakthrough technology. And this doesn't have to be in the steel industry, Prabhataji. It can be very generic, product agnostic. Do we have any new approaches available? For example, to reduce use of carbon, replace with hydrogen, which will maybe generate water instead of CO2.
Thank you, Sanjayji, for this question. In fact, I have a lot of things to say, but let me answer your question. Look, what is happening in the energy transition? The maximum amount of greenhouse gas is coming from energy sector, right? But
Hmm.
I think there is a massive work is being happening on the energy transition. The renewable energies in different form is coming in a tremendous way, and it is becoming so cost effective. In one point, I think to decarbonize the entire world, we should start electrifying everything, and and that will be possibly easier solutions and cost effective solutions. But there are a lot of promising technology, and Dr. Yadav talked about green hydrogen. That's going to be a phenomenal change which will make, and I think government of India has taken right steps. And specifically from a steel industry perspective, I think Dr. Yadav also talked about that how steel industry is very energy intensive and polluting. I will not say polluting, it's having a large carbon footprint, contributing almost 7 to 9% of the emissions in the world. So that's a fact. uh, Green hydrogen is going to play a very important role. uh, but we are yet to see when it will become cost effective for the adoption in
Yeah.
all the hard to abate sector, including steel, transportation, cement. So that is yet to see those breakthrough technologies. Um, a lot of clean takes, if you
Yeah.
see, has come up. And I see when I observe those, maximum numbers are coming in India. And there are interesting solutions they are providing, whether it is a biodegradable plastic, whether it is energy storage, it is whether it is, uh, making water out of the atmosphere. I mean, very interesting. And I'm pretty hopeful that the younger generation are serious about it, and they will move this technology in a very faster rate than what we can anticipate. The reason why I'm telling the adoption of technology will be faster than what we can anticipate, because I have seen how solar energy has penetrated 30 times faster than what we could have anticipated, and this is a BCG study publicly available.
Yes.
So I'm pretty hopeful about future.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm sure that, of course, we must all try to limit our temperature rise to 1.5. But I'm pretty sure we will
To
be.
1.5.
That is what I wish. But I think we should be able to at least be within 2 degrees. We must all try to.
Yeah. Perfect.
And I look forward to Professor Yadav's contributions in making that green hydrogen affordable for all the sectors to be applicable. I'm really excited to hear that. Thank you.
Excellent. And moving over to Ganapati ji, Ganapati ji, talking about the zero emission, moving from carbon to zero emission now. what are the potential pathways we have as an alternative fuel, especially for the shipping industry, which is diverse, very disaggregated? Is there new approach so that we reduce our carbon footprint? And where do we start, right? Is it the shipping industry or the airline? So what kind of a pathway you see there, Ganpatiji? We lost him. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, we lost him. All right, no problem. So, Shailesh, I will move on to you. You talked about blockchain, so I'm kind of dying to ask this question to you, right? Yes, crypto is the next phase for the financial world. Blockchain is the next technology. Everybody is talking about it, right? But the big problem, as I see it, Shaileji, is crypto is very energy consumptive, right? It has a high energy consumption, and it takes roughly 1,500 kilowatt of energy to mine one single Bitcoin. Maybe my statistics are here and there, 5%. Now, as the financial world moves on with this, how do we tackle the massive requirement of energy consumption if we need to still use blockchain as a technology?
Wonderful question, Sanjay. But let me give you a very out of the box thought.
Yes.
Take the Bitcoin. What is the Bitcoin? Can you not think about it as a store of that energy which it took to mine it?
Yeah.
And what is happening really is that it is being utilized to transfer that mass quantity of energy which otherwise would have been lost. And if you see where bulk of the world's mining is being done, it is in the extreme northern limits and extreme souths where
Yeah.
there is extreme weather conditions and where power is available, and it becomes a question of enabling that power to be transferred to places where that power is not actually available. So
Yeah.
think about it like that. I'm not a votary of Bitcoin at all, but let us not confuse blockchain with Bitcoin.
Okay.
Blockchain has nothing to do. I mean, it has something, but it's not every. It's not the only use case of a blockchain. Uh, uh, the blockchain is important because it creates decentralization, it creates transparency, and it creates the ability for people to share without feeling uh, concerned or threatened by who's going to see it, because it's only the permissioned people who will be able to access that open ledger. So, blockchain is an extremely valuable concept which
Absolutely.
will not only create the use case of Bitcoin, but many other use cases.
How about crypto, sir? Cryptocurrencies as they become much more in vogue?
Well, it's not cryptocurrencies that I'm tracking. I'm tracking the central bank digital currency
Digital currency.
revolution that is taking the
Sure.
world over. And that I think is a exceptionally positive move by a concerted move by the entire world, because let's not forget that the cost of using cash is the highest cost of
Yeah.
any other method of exchange. And therefore, the faster we wean ourselves away from hard cash, the better it is. And all other forms are intermediates to an absolute adoption of digital currency
Yes.
using identity layers, using the layer of recognition and the layer of transfer. So if we
Perfect.
can get a whole CBDC framework, we can see a very different world.
Perfect. I have a question for everybody. We're just 2 minutes away. I have a request. Can we go over by 5 to 7 minutes? Would that be okay for each one of you, Shaileji?
I have a hard stop. I'm sorry. I've
Okay.
got people waiting.
Sure, no problem. We can then we'll just continue for one more question and then we can call quits. I would like to go over to Dr. Umeji, bring on a completely different topic as the last question for today is sustainability in sports, right? Sports is fundamental to the well-being of all the communities, nations, whatever you can talk about. Now, how sports as an industry can play its role in achieving a sustainable goal, Dr. Umeji?
Yeah, it is one of the most important. Nobody has looked after the sports as a carbon emitting issue. But if you see the recent reports of what has happened in the World Cup in Qatar or something like this, people has to take very corrective action against in the carbon decarbonization for sports, because it's a very well accepted. Every game today is being played on a very large scale, and the kind of carbon emissions from these kind of big events really making the life difficult. And I think that should be one of the one more materialistic approach some of the standard board should include and take it to its final conclusion.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And guys, we are absolutely dot, and we don't want to, take it further for obvious limitations. But an amazing discussion. Didn't realize until last 3 minutes that we are actually coming close to it. We had few more questions there, so my apologies to all the delegates whom questions we are missing. Thank you so much, Shailesh ji. Thank you so much, Prabodha ji. Thank you so much, Umesh ji and
Thank you.
Ganpati ji for being here. Back to you, Charu.
Yes, thank you so much, Sanjay ji. But before I start thanking, I would first like to bask in some reflected glory where I share one alma mater with Shailesh ji, and we recently met at the alumni dinner. So yes, thank you, Shailesh ji, Professor Yadav ji, Prabodha ji, and Dr. Umesh ji. The discussion was quite enlightening. Obviously, 90 minutes not enough, but I think the crux came out very, very nicely, and our audience must have got enlightened with this. Sincere appreciation and gratitude for this eminent panel to have taken time out to come and interact with all of us. And thank you, Sanjay ji, for being our Sutradhar as always. Thank you, audience, for the comments and questions. We hope that we've been able to share something useful and the audience has benefited from this. The video of this webinar will continue to be available on the Celerity Supply Chain Tribe pages on LinkedIn and YouTube. This webinar will also be published as a cover story in our upcoming February issue of Supply Chain Tribe magazine, and we will share the digital copy of the magazine on LinkedIn as well. So continue to follow our page and keep looking for all our updates. Thank you all once again. Have a great evening ahead and the rest of the week ahead. Thank you all.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
And
Bye
bye
bye.
bye.
Thank you.
And
Bye-bye.
bye
Thank
bye.
you
Bye
all.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.